Todd, if you follow me on X, and I assume most of you do, you might have noticed that last week I put out my latest report card for key Trump administration officials. Now, in doing so, I gave the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, an A. Not an A+, but an A. Now, that's largely because of his position on the Maduro regime and his understanding of the threat that Venezuela and Cuba, in tandem for that matter, pose to the United States. And honestly, I also guess my expectations for someone who had often been featured in my previous Rhino Watch segments, as Rubio had, were quite low. And Rubio has been surprisingly better than I expected in the role. However, there is room for improvement, and I began to hear from many people, insiders in the administration and in Washington, D.C. and around the globe, actually, about areas in which the Secretary of State could do better, especially in keeping a closer eye on the foreign service appointments, like holdovers from Biden. Take the country of Guatemala, for example, where Guatemala-based journalist Steve Hecht warns that the State Department is supporting a Chavista ally to the detriment of U.S. interest in the region under President Donald Trump. According to Steve Hecht, it's Biden holdovers that are propping up President Bernardo Arevalo, who continues to facilitate narco trafficking into the United States. Now, in case you need further proof that the Guatemalan president is not someone the current administration should support, look no further than his endorsements. Here's a glowing puff piece of a press release from the disgraced U.S. Institute for Peace praising Arevalo in 2023, written by a Clinton crony, a former ambassador, McFarland. Now, the Guatemalan president also maintains a cozy relationship with his Colombian counterpart, leading narco-terrorist Petro. In fact, the U.S. just revoked Petro's visa last week as he was calling or urging American soldiers to refuse Trump's orders to disobey their commander-in-chief while he was on the streets in New York attending the United Nations General Assembly. And join us now to explain why the president and Marco Rubio needs to focus more on Guatemala and the Guatemalan president is Steve Hecht. Steve Hecht is a businessman and a writer. Born in New York City, speaking of New York, but now a resident of Guatemala since 1972. And you've probably seen his work in the Washington Times, Daily Caller, Epoch Times, Fox News, and of course, BizPac Review, that article we shared, and we're going to talk about a little more. Steve, it's good to have you on. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Emerald. It's great to be with you.
Okay, explain what's going on in Guatemala, because we'll be honest, it wasn't just Rubio not paying attention. It might have been the rest of us too. Why is this current president not good for U.S. interests? And explain who is propping him up. These Biden holdovers. We have their pictures and bios, so we'll pull them up as you described them, Steve.
Okay. The State Department was instrumental in fraudulently imposing Bernardo Arevalo as president in 2023. Now, part of this was, we all know, or we should know, that the Biden regime policy was to flood the United States with illegal immigrants and drugs. And the previous president was trying to do the opposite. And they wanted one who would do their bidding. And so they did many things. The fraud was very obvious, and they had to intimidate the Guatemala's judiciary and its private sector leaders so that Bernardo Arevalo would be inaugurated in January of last year. And they did that. Now, the ambassador at the time was Tobin Bradley, and the DCM at the time, well, I think Bradley came right in the beginning of 2024. But the DCM had been here, and he was instrumental in this intimidation. So that once Arevalo was inaugurated, which was it was illegal. I mean, his political party was canceled by the courts, which means that he could not be illegally inaugurated, but he was by Biden regime and State Department pressure. Then once he's inaugurated, he should be removed. Today, he's an illegitimate president. He should be removed. by the law, not for politics, but for legal reasons. But it's the U.S. Embassy that keeps him in power. The ambassador, Biden's holdover ambassador Bradley, and holdover DCM Ventrell. So the Biden, I mean, he put this guy here, and we're leaving him. Trump's administration, Marco Rubio, is leaving these people in power, and they're working against the United States. Now, while Trump is doing a great job with Venezuela, and he's got Navy vessels down there, he's blowing up some narco boats, but at the same time, that makes the land route much more important. And Bradley and Ventrell are protecting Arevalo, which keeps the land route open. Arevalo has he's purposely destroying the army. That he kept the defense minister in his post past the date, his term limit. And this makes the army, puts the army under huge pressure because every order is illegal. And so army members have to either obey illegal orders or they don't, which the Constitution requires them not to. But if so, they get charged with crimes, including possibly sedition. So the army is divided, and those who are with the president are engaged in narco trafficking. And there have been incidents that show this. So with this narco trafficking that's going on, it's completely negating what Trump is closing down off the coast of Venezuela. So I would say that Trump, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, what does the Trump administration need to do? They need to appoint someone who is loyal to their interests down there, someone not from the career service, perhaps, or someone they trust from the career service. Because look at those guys' resumes. If you look at their resumes, you know what they're going to be like. Bradley had served in the Bush and Obama administrations. He's like a career swamp creature that they send out to the Foreign Service, right? So what does Trump do to fix this?
Well, to fix the problem in Guatemala, he must remove Bradley and Ventrell immediately. He can't replace Bradley quickly because that requires Senate confirmation. So he would have to name a charge d'affaires to replace Ventrell, and that person would run the embassy until a new ambassador comes some months later. But it's urgent for him to remove those two functionaries, put in an America First charge d'affaires, and give him instructions. Trump, I'm sure, would favor Guatemala applying its laws. If that were to happen, then Guatemala could significantly reduce the flow of narcotics through Guatemala, which would place huge pressure on Maduro and the narco traffickers, because then they have to go by air and go by sea, which makes them much more vulnerable to U.S. interdiction. So that's what Trump should do. He's got to look at the State Department. I mean, that's what I wrote about. It's got Cuban intelligence inside of it. I can't prove that myself, but it certainly looks logical. And, Trump's in position to be able to investigate. Sure.
I've seen evidence of that, though we can't release it yet. But I think you're absolutely right about that. And that's why the pivot away from the Western Hemisphere, right? In fact, I was told for the last 20 years, essentially, CIA station chiefs have been told not to even report back on the Cuban threat. And I'm sure you've heard the same.
Yes, that's correct. I think we're talking about the same person. There's a new book by Ralph Pizzullo, Stolen Elections. I can't read it. The Takedown of Democracies Worldwide. And the whistleblower of that book, Gary Bernstein, was told that Condoleezza Rice did not want to mount any operations against Cuba. That was in Bolivia. And that this has gone on in the State Department. This has continued since then. As a matter of fact, the State Department has been promoting communist, anti-Americans in Latin America for years. And this really hit a high point during the Biden regime.
Well, look at Bradley. He's a Bush alum that worked in Obama, so it all makes sense. I want to ask you about another figure, someone who worked in Venezuela during Todd Robinson. How does he factor into this? And is he still, someone that we need to be wary of?
Absolutely. Todd Robinson, career Foreign Service officer, was ambassador to Guatemala, like you have on the screen, 2014, 2017. Then he was in Venezuela as chargé d'affaires, and he got expelled from there. Probably, he probably agreed. Maduro did him a favor by expelling him. And then Robinson, in 2015, he sent, together with this, it was a UN commission that called the CSIG, that was created by the United Nations in the state of Guatemala. And that commission, as a matter of fact, it's not in the book, but that whistleblower from Ralph Pizzullo's book, Gary Bernstein, was investigating the CSIG in Guatemala in 2017. Robinson was still the ambassador. Well, no, I think he had left by then. But anyway, what Bernstein found out was that it was the State Department running that criminal organization that was initially supposed to help Guatemala with its judicial system, but was really a George Soros pushed organization that was engaged in all kinds of crimes to impose criminal socialists on Guatemala. It was run by the State Department. So this is all part of the same thing. Todd Robinson was actually running that thing. He wasn't the head of it, but he worked with the commissioner of that CSIG, who later became Petro's defense minister. Had Colombia become part of the land route for drugs from Venezuela to the United States. And those two guys were great buddies. And Robinson became, those two together put 17 innocent people in jail so Biden could get a contract for a company that he had helped in Mexico during his vice presidency. And that criminal nexus showed itself because Biden was then named Todd Robinson in 2021, the head of INL, that's International Narcotics and Law Enforcement of the State Department. So he was confirmed by the Senate, which he shouldn't have been, but he was. And this guy worked against the United States. And what Gary Bernstein has found out is that is all one organization. That Venezuelan operation, the Cartel de los Soles, and China is controlling Venezuela. Venezuela is involved inside the United States. And this is a major requirement for Trump. He has to act against those cartels. He must. And in Guatemala, that's the place where, in Guatemala, he's not. His people, Bradley and Ventrell, are undermining him in Guatemala. Arevalo is illegally in power because Trump's ambassador and DCM are keeping him illegally in power. They should be immediately removed.
So this is great to understand. Guatemala must be a part of the overall strategy related to Venezuela, as you succinctly laid out, how they interconnect. We will see. We'll ask the administration, Steve. Unfortunately, we're running out of time. But this is a developing part of this whole story, and we'll see. I think they don't have an understanding of it, and perhaps once it's brought to their attention, we'll see some action. Steve Hecht, thank you for the excellent work, and you can see him at BizPac Review and Impunity Observer and follow him on X.
Well, you're quite welcome, Emerald, and thank you very much for having me.